Hello and welcome to this talk, which is simply titled Journalism. I am Ben Bayliss, Editor-in-Chief at CanIPlayThat.com. I also do accessibility consultancy and other accessibility stuff. I write about accessibility in places. And who's this person with me?
Hi, I'm Grant Steiner. I am the former mobility editor at Talent Playtime, as well as a freelancer where I have bylines in IGN, Fanbyte, Launcher, varying places across the industry. And my work is focused on accessibility and the disabled perspective.
And today we are both going to be talking about journalism, specifically accessibility in video games journalism. And we're going to be talking about why this type of coverage is so important, how it's currently being handled, and what people can do to improve it and get into the vertical. So, if we start off with Grant, he has a wonderful stat.
Yeah, last year during Xbox's Accessibility Showcase, it was revealed by Phil Spencer that there are over 400 million disabled players worldwide, meaning that coverage of accessibility news, features, reviews, and opinions is by no means a small subject. It's not niche, and there is a large and sustainable audience that journalists can reach into to produce these stories.
Yep, there's a lot of different ways that video game outlets can cover different areas. So, for example, we have news, which is something that I do a lot at Can I Play That? So, we can pull coverage from showcases, looking at how default gameplay is being sampled in the show. Um, Stuff like updates and patches for games that have just come out, or games that have even released ages ago and have been updated. Covering accessibility at events, like getting in person at events and talking to developers about what players can expect, and also pieces about tech in game developments.
I primarily write features and interviews, and the way that journalists uncover those are through examining the development process behind a piece of tech, a game, or a specific setting. You can also explore how disabled players interact with the game. So looking beyond what options they use, what's their setup, what is their specific gear or equipment they use in the game, how difficult it is to beat certain sections. You can also examine unique communities within games and how they relate to the disability community. A feature I did recently for IGN explored a Mortal Kombat tournament that is exclusive to sightless and low vision players. So you can examine Mortal Kombat as the franchise it is, but also explore what disabled people are doing with that franchise and how they're interacting with each other.
And the other area is, of course, reviews. This is mostly exploring accessibility behind the game through analysis. So something that we do a lot at Can I Play That, which is specific reviews that look at accessibility of a game and what's included and how that can affect players play the game. And basically, it's kind of like it's a good thing for video game outlets to have, but you need to make sure that the right people are working on that review, because they need to be handled with some form of care, because you want to make sure you're covering things accurately. You're not just looking at a checklist. You're looking at how things are implemented, and that's an important aspect that outlets need to ensure.
For me, for reviews, I found that accessibility is so much more than options within a menu. And so when you examine a game, like Ben said, look at the settings, look at how they're implemented, but beyond that, examine how the design of the game impacts disabled players. Can disabled players still play the games if a game doesn't feature certain options or settings? And we also have to remember that accessibility as a whole doesn't necessarily mean it's meant for disabled players. It can impact temporary disabilities. It can impact situations like parents holding newborns or people in bars with loud music and loud noises. If we only focus on accessibility as a means to assist disabled people, we're doing a disservice with our reporting for what accessibility truly can be.
Absolutely. And for this section of the talk, we're going to shift into if you're somebody who wants to start writing about accessibility at outlets. However, this could also translate to video game outlets who are also interested in expanding into that vertical. So I'm going to start off with Grant with some more journalism.
All right. This first counterpoint is primarily directed to the disabled community as a whole. Often, disabled people in the games industry find themselves juggling more than one role. A lot of us are advocates. A lot of us are professionals, like Ben and I. A lot of us are content creators. A lot of us are also consultants. If you're doing a review for a publication, the rules of journalism still apply despite you doing an accessibility review. And so what that means is, let's say you consult on a game. Ethically speaking, you are not allowed to provide a constructive criticism because your experience is already muddied, let's say, by working with the team, having them pay you for your services, having the experience of what it's like to see behind the scenes, and that may impact your decision in providing an honest and accurate review. I also want to point out for publications, be sure to diversify who you speak to. Make sure you focus on lived experiences rather than focusing on the big names of the industry. A mission that I've set out for myself, and I know Ben shares the same sentiment, is I always look for different names for every piece I write. Because with disabilities, and with the disabled experience, it's such a vast umbrella that if we only interview the same 5 to 10 people for every story, we're doing a disservice to the greater disability community. So be sure to interview people who we've never heard from. Go to social media platforms, pose your questions there, because disabled people have a lot to tell you, and they have a right, and they also deserve to have a platform to air what they love about the game, their grievances about the game, and what they want for the future of games.
So another area as well that we want to highlight, which I personally feel is important, is not chasing drama and not chasing the trend. Now, a very good example here will probably be to use The Last of Us Part 2 and The Last of Us Part 1, because the only time the majority of outlets start talking about accessibility is when a game is trending. is when there's a lot of noise that's being made on social media about it. And that can be very disheartening when there are other games out there that are making like sensible strides, they're making innovations, and just chasing those trends is not gonna put the spotlight on those. It's just showing that you're looking for traffic, and you kind of want to spread awareness, spread understanding, and educate rather than just focusing on the clicks. And I think, Grant, you've got some more to say on this topic, haven't you?
Right. So as many of you know, I despise the conversation surrounding easy mode. Not because I don't think it isn't a valid option, but because the conversations that we usually see don't add anything. They don't elevate the conversation. They don't educate people. They mostly just select a term or a buzz phrase just to generate views. And it's very possible to talk about topics like easy mode, but by doing so in a way that examines how it's implemented, how it benefits disabled people. Do games of all kinds need difficulty modes, or can you make accessibility without them? I also want to bring up a slight controversial topic about editorializing. So disabled people tend to have a lot to say with their games, with their experiences. Give them the space to voice their concerns. Don't put your own experiences alongside theirs. For years, disabled people didn't have a platform in the games industry. Then the last thing we want to do as reporters is muddy their conversations with our own experiences. If you are interviewing a disabled person, they are the subject of your piece, not you. And so we need to ensure that disabled people can continue to trust journalists by letting them fully share their experiences without fear of having it substituted for your own personal fear.
I think that could also relate back to the previous point as well, in the fact that when there is that drama that's being stirred up, then everybody's focusing on the writer who has written the story, but that's usually like the writer sharing their experiences with a game. And if they start putting like actual quotes from disabled players, then maybe people will actually read it and realize how this is impacting players, and actually accessibility is a good thing, and it kind of helps, I guess, provide an experience for those reading so that they can see that there's a variation of players out there, and it's not just the writer who's just talking over the top of disabled players' experiences. And I suppose that brings us to the future of journalism. So, as we've basically been saying, accessibility in gaming is not a trend. It should be treated as something that's happening like right now all the time, and it's important to put the spotlight on whether it's a AAA game or an indie game, or whether it's a developer that's sharing how they went about creating something. Like recently, there's been a developer behind The Last of Us Part 1 who implemented the haptics to speech to haptics feature with the DualSense controller. That's a story right there. Share those experiences.
I also think because, as you mentioned earlier, there's over 400 million disabled players, it's not going anywhere. accessibility isn't going to just stop because a game develops dozens of options or a game features beautiful design practices. As long as there are disabled people, there's going to be accessibility. And because of that, it's up to publications to begin finding ways to employ disabled writers. Maybe start them out as freelancers, but as the trend continues, because it will, look into creating accessibility full-time positions. Have a dedicated writer to cover, mainstream launches, to cover popular indies. If there's a new feature, like Ben said, have your disabled reporter report on those topics. And it's also eventually important to create specialized verticals for accessibility. If gaming publications can have verticals for tech, for movies, for TV, they can also have them for accessibility. Because at the end of the day, accessibility will only continue to innovate. And because I don't know much about SEO, I'll let Ben tell you about that.
Yeah, okay, so if you're from a video game outlet, you know about SEO. For those that don't know, SEO is what basically gets your website ranked on Google. It gets your website to the top of Google, it gets you more views and ad revenue, blah, 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 blah. Well, basically, SEO is what we were mentioning earlier, chasing the trends. You cover stories that you know are going to generate a lot of attention. And the majority of the time, at least what I tend to find, is it's all pointed at drama. And Can I Play That, for example, shameless plug, Can I Play That has managed to create its own SEO space with accessibility. So other websites could start employing that. Like while most websites may be focusing on the key phrases, searches of players searching on Google, something about Fortnite's latest skin, how to get it, how to obtain Fortnite skin, blah blah blah, then start opening that avenue for accessibility SEO and start like trying to target the audience that's searching for God of War, Ragnarok, accessibility, stuff like that. And that's going to get you the views from the target audience that you're aiming at there. Because even though it's not specifically showing up trending on Google Trends, it's still happening. And Can I Play That's organic views from Google searches has just skyrocketed in the last year. And it's great to see, and it's kind of proof that it can be done.
So,
Sorry.
oh, no, yeah, oh jeez, oh gosh. So, all of this info can be really daunting, especially to new writers looking to get into accessibility. So Ben and I have a few tips. I'll begin. You don't need to have an extensive portfolio to write about accessibility. Start pitching. Pitch to smaller sites. Don't aim immediately for the top site. You don't need that. You can start with smaller sites. And also, write for yourself. Have a personal blog. Show these websites that you're committed to this subject by writing about it. Show them that you have an interest in this knowledge, in this field of gaming. And always make sure to research and learn about accessibility. Don't limit yourself to your knowledge. It's okay to not know everything. I don't know everything. Ben doesn't know everything. We like to think we do, but we don't. It's always okay to do preliminary research, and even with interviews with developers. There have been times where I've openly admitted, like, oh, I wasn't aware of this. Can you explain more? How does this work? Not knowing something is how you produce amazing stories. Because that's when you can discover the true intricacies of accessibility. And also, be sure to educate and improve, and don't start writing hate pieces or anger-filled stories with no understanding of topics. I'm looking at you, Easy Mode. Stop writing about it. Do not help it.
So, as we come to the end of this, 'cause I think we're actually doing well for time. Hopefully everybody's enjoying the Battenberg and preparing to be a goblin later at the conference. But overall thoughts on the future of video game accessibility, like, are they hopeful? Are they dismal? For me, I think at the moment it's hopeful. Like, outlets are starting to report on accessibility a little bit more, especially some websites that are looking at doing coverage that isn't just focused on trending pieces. They're actually reaching out to players, they're talking to them. So some websites are starting to get the idea. It's just, I think there needs to be more in terms of like hiring and starting up their own like verticals, like accessibility specialists, just like they have tech specialists and stuff. So, what about you, Grant? What are your thoughts?
I'm mostly hopeful, if that makes sense. I understand, like, disabled people, including myself, are kind of impatient. Like, we've been waiting years for this to happen. Let's do it right now. But in order to change an entire industry, we need time. Time to teach, time to showcase how this works. Because that's going to be a lot more damaging if publications create these positions without the proper knowledge and understanding. It could set back the movement by years without proper experience and training. So I am hopeful. I would just ask disabled people to be patient. It's coming. We're not sure when, but I think it's coming.
I agree, and I think that brings us to the end of our journalism topic. There was probably like so much more that we could talk about, but we'll save that for another time, maybe another conference. But yeah, that's all from myself, and that's all from you, right, Grant?
Yeah,
Okay, so I guess we'll talk to everybody in the Discord if you're talking in the Discord, and we'll answer your questions if you've got any. And thank you very much. Over to Sarah.